The jeep rattled down the overgrown path, its tires crunching on the gravel, sending small stones skittering into the underbrush. John Carter, explorer of the unknown, gripped the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the crumbling edifice ahead. His heart pounded with a mix of fear and excitement. Cranbrook Asylum, a place of whispers and shadows where the walls seemed to hold secrets of the past. Locals spoke of it with fear-filled eyes, a place of madness and death. Stories of lost souls and eerie occurrences were common. He parked a distance away, the silence of the afternoon pressing in like a physical force, making every sound seem amplified. John grabbed his backpack, a shiver running down his spine. This was it, the moment he had been preparing for. He approached cautiously, each step crunching on the gravel, a stark counterpoint to the oppressive silence that surrounded him. Iron gates, rusted and twisted, stood as a warning. Their once grand structure, now a mere shadow of its former self. He pushed through, the metallic groan echoing in the stillness, sending a chill down his spine. An air of heavy sadness hung over the place, a palpable weight on his chest, as if the very walls were mourning. John pressed onward, drawn into the asylum's dark embrace, feeling the cold air wrap around him like a shroud. The air inside was stale and cold, thick with the scent of decay. It clung to everything, a reminder of the life that once thrived here but had long since vanished. Dust motes danced in the faint slivers of light that pierced the boarded-up windows, creating an almost ethereal glow in the otherwise dark and foreboding space. John walked through corridors lined with broken-down doors, each one a silent testament to a shattered life left behind. The echoes of the past seemed to whisper from every corner. He ran his hand along the peeling paint, feeling the rough texture beneath his fingers. It was as if the walls themselves were trying to tell their own story. The silence was unnerving, not the peaceful quiet of a forest glade, but a suffocating heavy silence that seemed to absorb all sound. It was a silence that carried weight, pressing down on him. It pressed against his eardrums, amplifying the beating of his own heart. Each thump echoed loudly in the oppressive stillness. He could hear his own breath echoing in the vast emptiness, each exhale a reminder of his isolation in this forsaken place. The air grew colder, raising goosebumps on his arms. He was being watched. The feeling was unmistakable, sending a shiver down his spine. A floorboard creaked somewhere in the darkness ahead. John froze, his senses on high alert. He strained to hear, his eyes adjusting to the gloom. There it was again, a soft dragging sound like footsteps shuffling across the floor. He moved towards the sound, his hand hovering near the flashlight in his pack. A cold draft brushed past his face, carrying with it a low, guttural whisper. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. He couldn't make out the words, but the tone sent chills down his spine. It was a voice filled with anguish and rage, the voice of something not at peace. John pressed on, his heart pounding in his chest. Chapter 4. The Doctor's Presence. The air grew noticeably colder as John entered a large room. Two rusted operating tables sat in the centre, medical instruments scattered across their surfaces. The stench of decay was overpowering here. This was the doctor's domain. The stories came flooding back, tales of cruel experiments, of patients driven mad by pain and fear. The air shimmered in front of him. A figure began to coalesce, tall and gaunt, with a cruel, twisted face. Dr. Simon Crane. His eyes, two burning embers, locked onto John's. A low growl escaped the doctor's lips, a sound of pure hatred and rage. John felt a wave of icy dread wash over him. He was facing something truly evil. Chapter 5. No escape. The doctor lunged, his spectral hand reaching for John's throat, his eyes glowing with a malevolent light. John stumbled back, tripping over a metal tray that clattered to the floor, the noise echoing through the empty halls. The sound seemed to enrage the doctor further, his ghostly form becoming more distorted and terrifying. He let out an ear-splitting shriek that echoed through the asylum, the sound of pure, unadulterated rage shaking the very walls. John scrambled back, his eyes darting around the room for an escape. There was none. He was trapped. the walls closing in on him. The doctor advanced, his burning eyes fixed on John, each step echoing like a death knell. John closed his eyes, bracing for the inevitable. But it never came. The silence was deafening. He opened his eyes to find himself lying on the gravel driveway, the sun warm on his face, a stark contrast to the cold darkness of the asylum. The asylum loomed above him, silent and menacing, its windows like dark, empty eyes watching him. Had it all been a dream? The line between reality and nightmare blurred. He looked down at his hand, his fingers trembling. Clutched tightly in his palm was a rusted scalpel, its blade stained with time. It was not a dream. The horror was real. And he had a feeling he would never truly escape Cranbrook, the asylum's shadow forever looming over his soul.